Good morning. It is November the 2nd, 2023, and so much going on in the world. I would like to share my screen today and share um, some charts and some things that are going on in the world that are affecting all of our lives. Some of them aren't affecting our lives, but indirectly they are affecting us, and they are testing us, and they are bringing up many issues in us. And that's really the purpose of it all, right? What it's bringing up in us and what God is trying to show us through it, and what the universe, God, heaven is calling us forth into. How is heaven calling us deeper? So I think many of us who are awakening right now, and the world is in a grand awakening. Some aren't. The stiff-necked, the pride-hearted, the hard-hearted, those that think they know 100% everything are not awakening. They are rejecting the awakening. But those that are awakening are realizing that we can no longer see the world through this narrow vision. When the Bible speaks of the narrow path, that is a completely different path. But when we look at the world, we have to look at it as a panoramic. And, many of us have been on an awakening journey and finding out many things about the world that are very grievous, very disappointing, shocking, revolutionary, can't believe it's true type of a stuff. And once you see, you can't unsee. And I think everyone that has seen has declared that, wow, I see, and now I can't unsee. So if we haven't reached that place, I think it's a good prayer to pray, God, give me eyes to see, to the point that I know that now I can't unsee what I've seen. It makes me accountable in a very broader way to humanity and to the higher path. But I'd like to share my screen today and share some practical things that are going on, because I think that the world system is set up in such a way that we know the education system teaches us all the wrong things, doesn't, hide so many things. All these systems have been shaken: medicine, education, university, banking, money, central banking, religion. These are all the systems we're not allowed to say anything about, right? We're not allowed. And if we do, we're condemned. So it's difficult. Take, for instance, if you've studied or if you've been awakened to what really happened on September 11th, 2001, you understand, like, that just blasts your mind open to understand the world in a much broader way. A lot of the esoteric, the hidden things that go on, and the systems behind the systems. So what we see in front of us is never the truth. There's always something behind that and behind that and behind that. So if we're taking everything for face value, we can know we're still seeing this, what we've been trained to see. And those are earthly eyes. Those are not spiritual eyes. We must pray for spiritual eyes to see beyond what is on the surface and go deeper. So there's a lot of different areas I'd like to touch on today. Let's start with the war in the Middle East, because we know that it is all surrounding, I believe it is all surrounding the dismantling of the US dollar, which we call the petrodollar. Now, I've talked about this many times on this channel, about the dollar, the institution of the Federal Reserve in 1913 on Christmas Eve, which is the control of, really, central banks are really controlling the systems of this world through the illusion of money. And how all the wars that subsequently followed the implementation of the Federal Reserve coming into being, that was founded first. They know what they're doing. They know the order of things. And yes, all tied to the astrology and all of the sacred geometry of the universe. It's all connected. It's all one. Everything meant to bring us back to God. especially the darkness. But the Federal Reserve came into being in 1913 on Christmas Eve when nobody was paying attention. Wars began to follow in early of 1914. How timely. And wars are always used to dismantle a currency. They are always used to shift the world, powers, the optics of the world power, because the world's power is all overseen by the same entity. It doesn't matter who's in control. And and then bring us to, after the war, the 40s, the war and its subsequent, when the war was over, the president told the Americans to bring their gold into the banks, and we'll give you these we'll give you these treasury notes, these dollars in place of them. And people were leery about it. And the president said, don't worry, it'll be equal. We'll just take your gold and we'll hold it for you and we'll give you these paper dollars. How smart. So the people did it. They were forced to, because they said, we're not going to be able to transact anymore on gold. So you're going to have to transact in these paper dollars, these fiat money, also known as fake, or by faith, we believe in it. And so people began to transact in fiat money, and they carried that over to 71 to 74, when they then, through Bretton Woods, took the gold backing off the dollar. In simple terms, we call that stealing the gold of the people. The gold was all stolen, and now fiat money was no longer backed by anything. At that same time, they established a contract with Saudi Arabia and the Middle East that they would protect them if all oil was traded in dollars. And the dollar became the petrodollar. Now we can look at all the hidden esoteric meanings behind petro, the rock, the oil, and we could do a whole study on all of the meanings and all of the spiritual messages that are being spoken into the spirit and from the spirit right now about oil. And we could look at the 10 virgins and how they half had oil and half did not have oil. I mean, we could go really deep into those things. We could go deep into prayer. It's just so much, God is just always speaking. The heavens declare the glory of God and speak forth messages and knowledge every day. We could be so caught up in the messages of God every day, and it really shows us that we can be caught up in God, and we don't have to be caught up in others. So getting back to petrodollar, the 70s, backed by oil, they set up this contractual agreement that we will protect Saudi Arabia. Now, if you go deeper into your awakening and down the rabbit hole, you realize the other things that are going on in that part of the world. I'm not going to get into that because my video will be taken down. But we must know these things, otherwise all we see is the surface, and we speak from ignorance. And so that was put into place over the world. Everybody trades oil in dollars, US dollars, and all trade is settled in US dollars. Now, for those of us that live in the United States and grew up in that system, that's all we know. We don't know about transacting in other currencies and having to make exchanges into the dollar, because our dollar is the world reserve currency. So when that is no longer the case, that's why America, that's one of the reasons America is going to go through a major transition and a major humbling, because all other nations have to figure out how they're going to get US dollars. We as a nation have basically taken advantage of other nations, all part of the setup, where we created dollars, we made debt, we created treasuries, and we made other countries buy our treasuries. Whenever we needed more dollars, we just created more of them, and then we told other countries like China and Japan and all these other countries, listen, you're going to have to buy our treasury debt, these dollars we created, how we hyperinflated our currency. And these countries had to come up with ways to actually make things, manufacture things, grow things, transport things to get our dollars, whereas we just took them in and created more and more and more and more debt. I mean, just that concept alone there is so much violation that we have done as a nation. Now, did we personally do this? No, but we have come under the benefits of what that has done to the world, and we have benefited from it. Again, we could be in prayer, we could be repenting constantly. We could just be in a continual prayer of repentance all the time, not focused on others, but focused on our own path. And so now the hour of the balancing of the scales is here. The hour of justice is here. Does that happen overnight? No. It's gradually, then suddenly. And there will be many suddenlies, and there have been many suddenlies. And we've been speaking about that for a while now. And when war broke out early in October, that was another suddenly. And yet many saw it coming. Now, obviously, this area of the Middle East is a very it's a hot part of the world, and many understand that. But one of the main things about that part of the world is because oil, which transports everything on the earth, at least a fourth to a fifth of the oil that is transported comes out of the Strait of Hormuz in the Middle East, in the Persian Gulf. And I just want to share my screen now. Now, the Strait of Hormuz is over here. It's actually, I've got the pyramids noted right here because I want to talk about that a little bit too. But the Strait of Hormuz is right here in this portion of the map. And I just wanted to do a zoom out on it because many people don't really know. So here is the Persian Gulf in here, right? Most of the world's oil comes from this region. Here's Iran, Afghanistan, Saudi Arabia, the UAE. Here's Yemen, Iraq has this little piece here, Kuwait. Here's Syria. And this little piece over here is Israel. And this is where war is going on over here. Now, this is the choke point right here of where most of the oil of the world is transported out into the Arabian Sea, into the rest of the world. Not to name all the thousands and thousands of products that are made from petroleum. I mean, all plastics and PVC and parts for cars. And I mean, you name it, anything that's made needs petroleum in some way. And then, of course, it's transported that way, whether by plane or boat or truck or car or train. So think about that. And if you understand that the United States has drained all of its SPRs, petroleum reserves, in the last 2 years, it's drained the millions and millions of barrels that we had in reserve. Was that planned? In my opinion, of course. Of course, everything is lining up. And I just wanted to note here, because if you widen out the map, you know, obviously if you zoom in, it seems far away. Here is Jerusalem, but here are the pyramids right here, the Great Pyramids in Cairo, in Egypt. And I just believe that these pyramids are going to be a ritual. And I believe that they probably are going to get hit with something as a ritual. Just like the way they took down the buildings, the towers. And this is obviously, you know, these are an ancient necropolis, archaeological site, which represent many, many things. And I would just encourage you to go and study that. And I don't know if you know, but one of the three names of Israel's natural gas sites in here, one of them is Leviathan, I forgot the name of the other two, but they're all cryptic names like that. They're all cryptic names. There's a lot of things we don't know, you know. We think we know, and we speak a lot of times out of ignorance, but we just don't know. So this is the main choke point for oil coming out of this Persian Gulf. I'm obviously watching U.S. military in there, and they're sending troops. There's planes over there. There's major Navy ships over there right now, right in this area and in here. Iran, has threatened. And when I speak of nations doing things, I come from the belief that all nations are working together and answering to a higher elite power. But they do their part. They're all pieces on a chessboard. So when I say that this country's doing this and this country's doing that, they're doing it because they're told to do it. They have to play their part. So Iran may take control of this and close it up. So if the Strait of Hormuz is closed, let me just tell you, most of the things on the earth are going to stop. The Strait of Hormuz right here. Imagine that. Look at that little waterway. Okay, what does this mean? Now, if nothing moves, obviously, okay, soon things are going to come to a halt, right? Resources are going to come to a halt. Obviously, oil comes to a halt. That all affects everything else that moves on the earth. So common sense says, have resources, have things in your house, have things that you need, things that you need to get by. But all of the charts have been pointing to a major breakout in commodities. And I'm not talking about a generational super cycle where there is a parabola, is what we call it in charting. It's a parabola. It goes like this. And so commodities have been waiting for the super cycle. All of the technical analysis charts, the marketing charts, and the astrological charts are pointing to a major parabola happening in natural resources, in commodities. How would that be set off? What would have to happen for that to be set off? Well, first of all, we know that generally speaking, whenever the dollar goes up, commodities go down. Whenever the dollar comes down, commodities go up. For commodities to break out into a major parabola like this on the chart, the dollar is going to have to crash. How would the petrodollar crash? Think about it. All the pieces, see. So we have to stop talking out of ignorance. We have to put the pieces together and understand. Give us eyes to see, oh God. We can't look like this anymore. Those days are over. Narrow vision is ignorance. I know I haven't even talked about the BRICS right now on this particular video, but I've talked about it many times. But if we talk about let's take a look at the NASDAQ, which represents tech, okay? This is your tech companies, your top tech companies. If we look at a chart back to 71, interestingly, when the dollar came off the gold standard, we see a consolidation period all the way until the end of the 90s, 20-year consolidation. And this is common for many assets. Crypto is in this 20-year consolidation right now, and it's ready to take off in a parabola like this. So crypto, which was introduced with Bitcoin, that's another whole video, which was introduced in 2008, just happened to be introduced in 2008 when the markets crashed and the financial system died. Takes us all the way through to a 20-year cycle, which would take us to about 2028, roughly. Now, Bitcoin, in my opinion, was introduced in when Pluto came into Capricorn, which represents the world systems, world banking, it was supposedly created by some guy named Satoshi, and nobody knows who he is. Come on, guys. Come on. Come on. We got to think. Just think a little bit. Satoshi is connected to Saturn, which rules Capricorn. We are now moving into Pluto has now just about entered into Aquarius. In my opinion, Bitcoin is not going to be the world cryptocurrency. It was just used for a purpose to draw people in. It did make people millionaires. I saw people become millionaires, just regular, everyday guys and girls through Bitcoin. What an opportunity they were given. They had information. They had the opportunity to make wealth. Wow. So, but this is the NASDAQ, right? And this is a typical chart of consolidation. And then we have a breakout. And then we have a double bottom, sort of, right? This is a bottom, breakout, double bottom. And now the parabola takes us up into 2023. We have a peak. And this is, like they say, nothing can keep going straight up. Look at this right here, because this is 2020 when they started all the stimulus. Let's go back to 2001. After the market died here in 2008, right here, that's when they created QE, quantitative easing, which is a nice name for let's print money up the wazoo. And that's why the markets were able to just go up and up and up and up on fake money. And then we had the rates rise very rapidly. And this is what happened to the markets. Oops. And we'd have to learn, you'd have to learn charting. You'd have to learn and understand what markets are about and why rates have what they have to do with the debt market, and how the debt market really is the foundation of the entire stock market, to really understand why the markets came down at that time. Let's go back to the chart. I'm sorry. So this chart is very bearish, as we say. If we look at it on a long-term scale, here's a peak. We broke down, and then we have this bounce, and people say, oh, things are going to be better, right? I want to show you the psychology of the markets. You remember that chart? Okay. If we look at this here, say this was that long consolidation we talked about in the NASDAQ, and then it came all the way up with all that money printing. Then it came down, and then we have this bounce, and people go back into complacency. That's where we are right now. And we've just about dropped here, and people are getting anxiety because they are like, oh no, you mean we're not going back up? Now, we may have a bounce like this that may come up like this very little bit, but something's going to bring these markets down and back here to capitulation, where money is waiting to buy them. What's going to happen? Well, if that Strait of Hormuz closes, I can tell you this: commodities will become as gold, and stocks will become as garbage. Who cares about having investment in a stock, which is nothing? You own nothing when you don't have food, you don't have clothing, you don't have material, you don't have a blanket for your bed, you don't have a washing machine. When you need the things that you need, stocks mean nothing. That's why we're going to go into a commodity cycle. And I believe that this Strait of Hormuz is critical. So we need to be watching and preparing for this strait to close. It may or may not happen. I'm watching for it. I'm hoping it doesn't. I believe that it may. In the meantime, we see the BRICS countries. I've been talking about this for about 5 years, but we've seen the BRICS countries coming together saying that we're not trading in dollars anymore. We're going to bind up together, and we're going to create a currency where we back it by gold, and we all trade amongst ourselves, and the United States can go take a walk. Now, we've seen some trades done that way and a little bit of that emerging. In my opinion, this is a threatening optical illusion. Do I believe it's really going to happen? I don't. I don't believe it's going to have to happen, but I believe it's a rhetoric, it's a storyline to get us farther and farther to the place we need to get to in bringing the dollar down and getting us onto central bank digital currencies. So right now they're having the world believe that these BRICS nations, which they're adding more and more countries to the BRICS now, I believe that more than 20 have applied to become part of the BRICS nations and to unify against the United States. And they're basically talking about, hey, let's use our resources, commodities, to back our currency that we're going to create together. And we'll back it by our commodities, and we'll trade in such a way where our commodities back the currency, which is really the right way to do it. And you can see by comparison, the United States has backed their fiat money with nothing. They've basically robbed the nations. So it's weighty, it's karmic, it's grievous. What will happen? What will happen? What is going to bring us to the point where BRICS are not going to have to use that system or use a BRICS currency where something blows up and they say, okay, we've got to go on central bank digital currencies? What's going to happen? Is it going to be a cyber event? Is it going to be part of the Strait of Hormuz closing? Is it going to be an attack on the United States? And even if I say this on here now, it's probably going to be shadow banned. My channel's been shadow banned now for the last several weeks since I mentioned certain things. My views are way down, and I definitely believe people are praying against my channel and all of that. But I just bless you. I bless you in God. I bless you. Everyone praying against my channel, I release blessings over you. I release glorious voice of the Lord over you. I release enlightening insight of God over you. I release blessings on your family. I release love over you. And I meet you in the heart of God. I will meet you in the heart of God. I love you. So we are at a point where we could see a major takedown of these markets. And I don't mean tomorrow. It could be in a few months. We always see a Santa Claus rally in December, and I think we probably will. But that commodity super cycle, how is that going to be set off? How? Something has to happen in the world. And I see two major dates connected to that possibly happening. 11/11. And not because that's 11/11. I know that's like a angelic number or something. But because of the astrological aspects on that day. 11/11, I think, is going to be a precursor to February 14th of 2024, and then April. So those 3 times, 11/11, February 14th, 2024, and then mid-April, are going to be key date areas. Maybe not on those specific dates, but around those times that we should be watching for. But we need to prepare. And I was speaking to a friend who was moving out of New York. Her house is all packed. She's going to the mountains of Pennsylvania, and we were just talking. And I recently was in New York, and I shared about that experience and how I saw New York has completely and rapidly declined, filled up with people, a lot of poverty. But I just felt such a love for the land when I was there, like a restored love, a renewed, purified love, a blessing for the land, a blessing for the people, just a love for the people. And I knew God was flowing through my heart when I was there, just as I walked the streets of New York, especially in the downtown area and through Chinatown, Little Italy, the east side, the west side. We walked a lot that day. Wow, I must have burned a lot of calories that day. But just seeing, the influx of people, probably a lot that have come through the border, the open border, which is freely open and will be blamed on any type of ATT-ACK that happens in the US is going to be blamed on that open border. Come on, guys. I posted this on Facebook. We're not even allowed to bring a small bottle of shampoo on a plane. I couldn't get into a football game the other day with a bottle of water. Borders are wide open. Why? We got to think. We got to have eyes to see. We got to stop with this. It's ignorance, and it will only come back to have to teach us the lessons when we speak in pride and ignorance. Let us be willing to learn. We don't know everything. Let us be willing to learn. So what else do I want to talk about today? Like uranium, in my opinion, if you want to trade something, Pluto is just about entered into Aquarius. It will fully enter into, we're going into the age of Aquarius, okay? Aquarius is ruled by Uranus, okay? Uranium, plutonium, these nuclear powers. That's why we're in the nuclear age. You want to trade something long term, you want to hold something long term, find a solid uranium stock and just keep adding to it, just keep buying it. I mean, that's like an easy trade. Oil, find a solid oil stock. I don't even want to name certain ones on here because I don't want to give financial advice. But oil's going to take off. Again, here, let's use wisdom. Fill up your oil tank. If you have the money, do it now. Okay, so say oil doesn't go up this winter, it's next winter that it's going to happen, or the winter after. We don't know the time frames, but it's going to happen. And it's wise. It's wise to prepare. Fill up your oil tanks, have gas on hand, have extra gas, have cash on hand, have, preparations, have food. If God has told you to move out of your region and you're dragging your feet, it's time to follow. It's time to follow God's lead. It's time to listen and really do the things that courageously we're being called to do. We're in a time where we need to be bold. We need to be courageous. We need to be humble. We need to be prayerful. We need to be teachable. We need to be teachable. It's going to be those that are not teachable that are laid low. They're going to be crushed under pride. I remember when I was trading with Palestinian guys and it broke my heart because I realized that they were people and I judged these people. I hated them because of what I had learned through religion. And I realized that they were people with a heart, with families, with love, with kindness. They loved God. They wanted to know God. I judged them. I needed to repent. I needed to love them through God's heart. We don't know everything. We're not right about everything. We need to be teachable. We will be crushed under pride. The Bible says it so many times. Just read Proverbs alone. If our religion doesn't lead us to love, then it constantly leads us into judgment. We're not in the right religion. We need an awakening. We need an eye-opening. We need a repentance. We need a revival. I love you. I love my Christian friends. Meant so much to me, poured so much into my life, were such a community to me. I love my Jewish friends. My daughter is dating a Jewish guy, probably going to marry him. I love him so much. I love his family. I love Jewish people. I love the nations of the world through God's heart. I love the astrologers. I love the psychics. I love the gays. I do. I love them. God, give us your heart for humanity, just as you love us. Help us to come into the oneness of your heart for all of humanity, because we are one body. Bring us into higher truth. Humble us on the path as we go in, so that your power may emit out of us. and we can bring heaven to any realm, wherever we go in the spirit or with our feet on this earth.